Oh, there we go. I use the, yeah, I use the, okay, well, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Um, it's so great to be in the committee room after so many years, you know? It's really awesome. So, in any case, today we have briefings with the Maryland Environmental Service, MACO, and MML. And so let's just begin with Charles Glass and Jeff Tosey with Maryland Environmental Services. Come before us now and explain yourselves. Okay, so there we go.
Oh,
Don't touch the button.
don't touch the button.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Chair Barbe. For the record, my name is Charles Glass. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Environmental Service, and we just wanted to come down and introduce the service to new members and old, and give an update on our operations and our structure right now. So, what is MES? MES is an independent state agency. We were formed in 1970, and it was really in response to the Clean Water Act and its provisions inside of the newly formed U.S. EPA, and formed to assist state agencies. So state agencies are our client partners. We're not directly appropriated. 65% of our revenue comes from state agencies, largely the Maryland Department of Transportation and Department of Natural Resources and Corrections and Public Service. So we also work for county governments. Chiefly 8 counties are our major partners: Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Talbot, Kent, Caroline, Queen Anne's, Harford, and Garrett. We do service throughout the state in every jurisdiction, but those are the counties that we have solid waste operations in the form of recycling or landfill operations. We also do some work for the private sector where we offer our services. Our mission is to support the environment in Maryland, so any projects we do has to have an environmental connection and be approved as an environmental part of our mission. We also do some work for the federal government, and we write grants to the federal government, generally for our state partners. Probably the premier one is DERA grants, Diesel Emission Reduction Act grants for the Maryland Port Administration, for the MDOT Maryland Port Administration. That is a long-term grant changing out to high-efficiency diesel engines, dray trucks in the port. Next slide. So what is our status is really, we're in a gap between hiring, the state agencies hiring environmental engineers and scientists to be their experts in-house, or hiring a consulting firm and paying the rates for consulting firms for their environmental expertise. We combine the public sector commitment to environmental protection and making sure that we are efficient and flexible and have a rapid response with the private sector. The rapid response of the private sector: you pick up the phone, we're going to respond. Any county government, any municipality, any state agency can pick up the phone and ask the Maryland Environmental Service for a scope of work, or they can draft a scope of work and we can respond in any myriad number of forms of procurement. Generally, with county governments and municipalities and state agencies, these are intergovernmental agreements, memorandums of understanding, and then or just a task-based contract. We have every option in the book. We have 3 special powers we like to describe. You have to understand, because we are not appropriated, we do work when we're asked to do the work, and we come to an agreement with a client partner, and that work is what we do. And when that work is over, it's over if it ends. So we go away. A small town can contract with MES to manage their water treatment or wastewater treatment, and they can end that contract. Generally, the contracts that we have are 30 to 60 day. You can terminate at any time. We really focus on meeting client partners where they are and what they want to do. So there's flexibility in how they structure those agreements. But We do public-private partnerships, and we have shortlists. We do general design build and operate and maintain agreements. So really any agreement, any procurement agreement that you've heard of, we have the capability of doing, because our three special powers are we have our own procurement, financial, and personnel systems, which makes us different than other state agencies. Next slide. So we have over 1,000 projects going on at any time throughout the state. Last year, we exceeded $180 million in total operating revenues. At MES, operating for the year and capital for the year are commingled in that term. So 2/3 of that revenue, which is a part of that 180 million, flowed directly into the private sector. So for every one of our divisions, we have shortlists for A&E, consulting, all types of support. And generally, so a lot of the clients obviously know who those firms are and will direct us to use those firms. And we have long-term firms. We meet or exceed the MBE goal for the state at 29%. So last year we did hit the goal exactly. There have been years in my first 2.5 years where we exceeded it at 31%, and it's a long-standing performance check for MES. And so 700 plus employees. We have a special operator and training program for water wastewater. We have an environmental specialist series that trains environmental specialists in all 4 of our operational groups and has a place for them. We have a supervisor and manager training program every winter, spring, to give staff the opportunity, selected staff from throughout the state, to get supervisor or management training. Lots of technical specialty areas. And just this last December, we were voted by the Baltimore Sun's top workplaces in 2022. So that was a first for MES, first time applying and first time being selected. And there's just a tremendous diversity of our work. As a part of the MES Reform Act, we also produce a greenhouse gas reduction report annually, and that came out and was delivered to the General Assembly in December as well, along with our annual report that has all of our financials and the focus projects for our groups. Next slide. We probably can skip over this. I just want to, just the general structure is yeah, you can barely see it too. The 4 blue on the second row down from myself and my deputy are the 4 operating groups, which we'll be highlighting in the next slides. And then there's the 3 sides. Mr. Tosi is on one of those 3 bubbles that directly report to me, along with our administrative and our financial, our CFO. Next slide. So environmental dredging and restoration. MES has 125 staff that support the Harbor Development Group at MPA. We are responsible for the design and construction and operations at Poplar Island, Hart Miller Island, Masonville Dredge Storage Facility, Dredge Containment Facility, Cox Creek Dredge Containment Facility. And just this past, in the last 6 months, well, last month, the port acquired the Tronox property next to Cox Creek, where we'll be helping them with innovative reuse and beneficial use. In the harbor, the port has the challenge of removing 500,000 cubic yards of material from the harbor channels every year and placing it properly. And it's running out of space in the scale of 25 years. So there's a goal to innovatively reuse and beneficially use as much of that material as possible. The port has been giving out pilot projects for the last few years, and some of them have been very successful. That's for them to give their shine on. But we also do, we have an engineering group that supports all of that, and we also have operations, 115 folks that are just doing operations every day. Habitat restoration and mitigation services. We do NEPA and planning through this group. This group also has helped dredge Lake Linganore in Frederick County in recent years, and is also working on a dredging project in Garrett County at Deep Creek Lake just recently. So primarily working for MPA this group does, but they also have branched out and do support for environmental restoration and dredging projects throughout the state. Oh, and worked on the Conowingo pilot dredging project that just completed last year. And that report is out by MDE. Environmental operations is our largest group, 255 staff members, and they work in the design, construction of landfill and recycling facilities. That's their core function. So they operate the Midshore Landfill Agreement, and they're currently at Midshore 2, planning for Midshore Landfill 3, which will be in Queen Anne's. And they close and manage the closure of Midshore 1, which is in Talbot County. But this group does a myriad of solid waste functions. So we've got CFC recovery, carbon fluorocarbon recovery throughout the state. Ag tire program is through this group. They recycle ag tires, and that's done in support by MDE, but throughout the state. Environmental monitoring, this is the organization this is the group that actually runs the MRF, the Material Recovery Facilities, in both Prince George's County, operations, Prince George's County and Montgomery County, and composting, both including food waste composting in Prince George's County at the organics facility, but also the yard waste composting in Montgomery County. And also the landfill operations in Harford County, along with some composting in Harford County. So this group does a lot of actual work, has a lot of operations, a lot of labor, and it's our largest and most highly funded group. Next slide. Technical Environmental Services is kind of our hodgepodge group. I like to say it's our stormwater group. That's primarily what they do. But this group manages de-icing at BWI Airport and BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport and at Martin State Airport. And this group houses our maintenance team. So our maintenance supports water, wastewater operations throughout the state at all of the state parks and at all of the correctional facilities. And they also are, the A1 maintenance team, electricians and mechanics and machinists that can be deployed throughout the state if there's a need. They can support pretty much getting any environmental infrastructure back up and running. We also have a renewable energy portfolio. This group has 7 embeds in the Maryland Energy Administration. We've been working with the Maryland Energy Administration on grants for energy efficiency grants throughout the state, and we support them in evaluating that. And we do sample collection both in the environment and at industrial facilities throughout the state with this group, where we send samples to labs to give an actual accurate view of whatever the stormwater, wastewater, whatever it is. We do collection and analysis of the data, managing the facilities that are in our responsibility for state agencies and for others as well as an outsource. So sometimes a county maintains their facilities, but they just don't have that capability, or they choose not to invest in that, and they come through MES for lower costs than they would incur if they had to build that capability for a small jurisdiction. Next slide. And wastewater is our original. MES started with 22 employees in the Department of Natural Resources, generally to support the park system for water and wastewater. And this group now, all 4 operational groups has an engineering core, has 10 or so, approximately 10 engineers that really aren't stamping designs. We don't design and stamp. We review designs by other engineers and certify that we believe that they are great. And then we work with operations as we build infrastructure in the state facilities with our engineers managing that construction. So we have a capital program that is largely funded by Department of Natural Resources and Corrections, but we also work for the Maryland Military Institutions and Veterans Affairs. Any state facilities, we generally manage their water and wastewater treatment. And we make sure that they are in compliance and stay in compliance. And we have really an incredible program from one end of the state to the other, from Garrett to Somerset, of training operators, Class 5 water and wastewater treatment operators. We have 150 staff in this group approximately 130 of them are licensed operators. They are in 5 regions in the state, and we have an operator and training program. And largely in the core counties, 95 core counties, when we train our operators, they leave, and we're working on that. We've done some adjustments to compensation. They leave and go to other great utilities in the region because we're not held to state rates, but we also don't exceed state rates at too high of a level. But we train people well, and they come in and they become great operators, and they become great staff for counties throughout the state and other municipalities. And so that's our whole water wastewater group, and it's the original core group. Those you gotta go. So this is the group that on March 27th, when Secretary Grumbles called and asked to send folks into Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant, this is the core group. Deputy Furketic was after it got stabilized for a couple weeks, Deputy Furketic was point on it, and this group is the group, both the engineering side and the operators were core to supporting and maintenance. And the maintenance crew was also, because they're based out of BWI, they're not that far, and they all went over and they've helped with Back River. And I can answer any questions related to that. But so I've been the director of MES for 2.5 years, and early on, I thought we needed to refocus on a core in support of our mission vision and come up with a new motto. And over time, we did all of that. And so safety is our first pillar. We've had 7 fatalities at MES over the 52 years of MES's existence. These are industrial facilities. If we are not focused on safety all the time, accidents do happen. We had a solid waste fatality, not MES, but in the industry of solid waste in Cecil County recently by a contractor on a slope with a piece of heavy equipment that rolled over. So we focus on safety first, safety always. We don't do anything else. We don't worry about the bottom line or top line or anything else with finances, and we strive for safety. We have a compliance-focused safety program because of sins of the past. 25 years ago, you lie on environmental reports that was determined, and MES had to adjust and come up with a compliance-focused safety program. And we have a safety chief that was on that chart, and she is given carte blanche, and she is funded to her needs, or in excess of her needs. She has 1 vacancy, and that's our focus. So when people are onboarded, we start with safety. We have safety stand downs. Whenever we have anything like even near misses, we generally stand down at all of our facilities, and that's our core focus. Before anything else, safety. Level of service is our second pillar, supporting our mission. And level of service is really something I got from working at EPA headquarters in 2010. We focus on our level of service to all of our state and county clients. We get kudos constantly about that service, but the management structure is meant to be, we respond. So you call us, we're going to respond. If anyone wants to learn, we're going to respond. And we just want to focus on our level of service to both clients, but then also internally. So our vacancy rate did grow during COVID to 10%, and right now I can report it's at 4%. And a lot of it was this focus on our level of service, both externally and internally, focusing on our human resources, focusing on how we're recruiting, and it's really paid dividends so recently. And the third pillar is education and training. We obviously meet the standard IRS code for contributing to a college education if someone wants it, but we focus on paying for CDL drivers. I've already talked about the operator training program. Our environmental specialist series has education built in, so when people come to MES and they will get the education and training and continue to grow, we invest in them. They sometimes leave at a pretty good clip, but we feel like that is part of our service to the state and the nation, and producing people that are highly trained and highly educated and highly skilled in these areas. Sometimes our operators in rural counties actually get better opportunities to work for those counties directly and become great operators and supervisors. So I try to make sure that we have the budding of young people training up and becoming better managers and supervisors, pushing up against senior people that have so much more experience, but then they don't want to wait. So they go and they get the next level up. But we only have so many, we only have so many management positions, but we want to make sure that we're keeping our best as best we can. Next slide, maybe I'm getting the rope. MES has so we have our solar canopy in back of our building. We've had solar for a while. We have 2 EV chargers. We now have the conflict of staff coming and the competition and making sure people limit their charging to 4 hours. Our focus is sustainability and resilience, trying to make sure that we're always innovative. We always meet or exceed our regulatory requirements. We're honest about when we don't. We have our list. I check monthly on any times we don't hit our numbers for some of our effluent. And we want to provide a value proposition. In my first year, ACEC, the American Consulting and Engineering Companies, but the Maryland chapter, had some questions about MES, and there's always this pushback. I haven't had it recently, and I like to express to them when I meet with A&E consultants, we're a value proposition for them. We can get new business to them in 3 to 6 months. Capital projects can move quickly. They will be paid on time. They will be paid after 30 days. And it's worked so far. And I try to keep in contact with them and make sure our short list is lit. But next slide. I think that's... I've mentioned a lot about the streamlined procurement. We can skip that. And that's it. So I hope I didn't over chat.
That's perfectly fine. Now, I know there may be questions. Here's the way it worked last year. If you want to ask a question, poke your little button and I can recognize you in the order in which you pushed your button, which nobody appears to be doing right now. Okay, so let me, oh, here we go. And there we go, it worked.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome. I'm glad that you're here to discuss this with us. MES is responsible for hiring contractors for dredging. Is that correct?
Yeah, sometimes, yes.
Sometimes?
It depends on the client. So the Army Corps of Engineers really hires most of the dredgers. And
Okay.
there have been some times when inside the harbor, MES has handled that contract vehicle for a dredging company.
So Port of Baltimore, you'd be handling that?
Most of the time, yes, sir.
Okay.
Most of the time.
And the reason why I'm asking the question is when I was chair of natural resources, and for some of you that was probably 15 decades ago. Pterodactyls, yeah, you know. There was a gentleman who had a contract for dredging, and it's an African-American gentleman, and he couldn't get his contract renewed and had to take his entire tugboat and barge system down to Texas. And it's something you probably can't answer now, but can you look at the minority participation in something along those lines? I've lost track with the gentleman because he probably got eaten up by a pterodactyl or something. But I would appreciate you looking into that.
Captain I might be mispronouncing his name, but it was like Captain Pegues.
You got it.
Yes.
You got it.
No, so for Seagirt, so this was my first year, and I don't know about that contract you're relating to, but we had Seagirt Berth 3 that was being dredged, and Captain Pegues wanted to have his boat be a part of holding the barges in place and moving.
Yes.
And he did end up being on that contract, and we did get that awarded at the MBE requirement.
did?
There was a
Okay.
challenge. That's why you didn't hear from him again, I think, because he was on the project. That project finished successfully, and it was about $13 million of dredging for Seagirt Berth 3 for post-Panamax ships.
Because he was pretty disappointed. And
He was, and-
I'm glad that he didn't contact me any longer because he didn't get eaten by a pterodactyl.
No, he's...
Okay. Have a follow-up?
Sure, if you can pronounce the word
Pterodactyl. You're also responsible for dredging stormwater management ponds, I think, or something along those lines, maybe not.
So just to be clear, we're responsible for something if we're contracted to do it. So
gotcha. Okay.
there's no blanket, like there's a confusion of MES with MDE and our stat,
I got you.
So, but no,
All right.
we're not responsible for anything less.
Final question, Mr. Chair. On your application for employment, is there a requirement for a number of years of understanding stoichiometry? Thank you, Mr.
No,
Chair.
sir.
Okay, it's always good that we're going back to the old favorites. Next question goes to Delegate Boyce.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys for being here. Can you talk a little bit more about, I think I heard you correctly, that you use some of your staff to go down to Back River, and can you talk about that process?
Sure. So, so on March 27th, on March 27th, 2022, excuse me, Secretary Grumbles ordered MES in. And we responded immediately, and we sent 15 licensed operators to support operations. And we had been directed in that order to assess Back River and write a report in 90 days. And we put together a team of engineering, maintenance, and operations. So in our organizational structure, there are, if you think of master electricians, there are master operators. So they've gone up, they've operated for several years, lots of different facilities, and then they become a manager for a region, and then so those folks were part of the team. The division chief in water wastewater, his deputy, the chief engineer for biosolids. So at the end of wastewater, you have to do something with solid material that had settled at the bottom of facilities, or when you have digested as much as you can, the leftover material, inert material. So that biosolids manager was sent over too, and we have a project manager who has a lot of experience, 50 years of experience on projects, and he was sent over. So we assessed it both from operations and supporting operations. We went over with engineering to assess the processes of the plant, and then we also had senior managers in safety and maintenance, and a maintenance crew of 5. And we had our contractors sometimes help with a surge of support. So the maintenance folks for MES were in their lull season because of de-icing being largely over in April, and they were able to dedicate a significant amount of time for 6 months. So the way the story goes, first 90 days, we were under that order. Then there was a second order signed June 6th that changed some of the language and changed some of the relationship between Baltimore City DPW and MES. And we adjusted to that change. We left about the same person power at the facility that first month, but we also got the effluent in compliance in that 90 days. There was a stipulation in that second agreement that after another 90 days of compliance, Baltimore City could kindly ask MES to leave. And so from June to September, the plant was kept in compliance, and we were approaching being out of agreement. Now, the way that the results go, you send all your results to a lab. Baltimore does send their effluent and they send all of their samples out to a laboratory as well. There's a time lag between when you send something to a lab, they do all of the sampling, and then they send you the results back. So by late September, all those results were back, and they confirmed that they were in compliance for that whole time. So in August, I expressed that we were demobilizing, and I felt like the plant was in compliance, the emergency had been met. If there are any sustainability issues, that's not what the order was for. So then there was a third iteration of the consent order from September to December 31st. And the only issue with MES is that when we're ordered in that fashion for an emergency, emergencies are like a snowstorm or a hurricane, something that is a few weeks. We pull staff from other places and we overtime the backfill. But we are stressing our staff, and we were facing, okay, we're stressing our staff, our operators particularly. We're pulling them, in order to not pull one location too hard, we're pulling from all over the state. So we're pulling from Cambridge and Somerset County and Garrett County and Hagerstown. We got operators all over. We're pulling together those 15. So we started lowering our number of operators. We let 2 major capital projects from our perspective, and which are fixing 2 of the primary settling tanks and cleaning out 2 of the high-rate digesters. I know this is whatever. If anyone wants to know more information, I'll tell you. But we let 2 capital projects at the same time in the summer. So in the 3rd iteration, same thing. It was a repeat of the 2nd. And just to speed up, I'm a former professor, so forgive me if I talk too long. But then we just agreed to, but the Board of Estimates has not countersigned. I believe they'll sign tomorrow. But we just submitted a 4th iteration. That iteration really is just saying Baltimore City agrees to reimburse MES. MDE and Baltimore City have a consent order agreement that MES is not a party to. But I signed a reimbursement agreement with the DPW director, and that's just to say that MES will be compensated and give directions on MES won't do any work over $250,000. We won't let any contracts. But since the first 90-day period, we've always been in communication. Senior leadership still meets, DPW senior leadership and MES and MDE. They meet bi-weekly with a larger group, weekly with a smaller group. With just the principals that we have on the project, and that's where we're at. We're waiting for.
So you're no longer on site. You're just waiting for payment.
So what's on site right now for MES is we have no more operators present. We were in order to have operators on site for a lengthy period of time. We need a contract vehicle of some type, IGA, MOU, something that I can hire to. I was not backfilling operators, and that was unsustainable. So 9 months, and we have no more operators there. We have the 2 capital projects that are ongoing and that are evaluated a few times a week, and we're there. Our project managers are managing those 2 capital projects. They're due to finish, as long as things go well, by June. Murphy's Law exempted. And we have maintenance equipment that is back order. So we have a few $1 million in equipment we've purchased that can be pumps, valves, different pieces throughout the plant. We've stopped ordering more, but we are finishing that list. When they arrive, our maintenance folks go out, install, and wait for the next piece. So that's our presence.
So no longer permanently there, but there for those small.
Correct.
And you said you have an ongoing relationship where you continue to meet.
So yes, managers still meet between the 2 organizations.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let me just quickly follow up. In the course of your activity there, were your staff involved in any training programs for DPW staff?
I don't believe so. We shared our model. So we shared our operating training program. I shared that directly with the DPW director. And I read that they were going to start one. But other than interaction between operators and managers, on-site stuff, we did not formally start a training program.
Did you do any, you said you did a report, and I haven't read it. So you did an assessment of the situation. Did you do an assessment of the management structure, or?
Yes.
Okay. Have you published that report yet?
Yes, since June 6th it was published.
Okay. I'd love to have a copy of that.
We'll get it to you directly.
Okay.
Wow, the first time I speak in this committee, too. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize to my more seasoned colleagues on this committee if this question's obvious to everyone else. I used to be a professor. I've already made a mistake, so I'm cool with that. I used to be a professor as well, but I'll try to keep it really short. You have a very unique structure within the state government from some of the other committees that I've worked with. I'm trying to understand your relationship with the state and local projects that you work with. And you did allude to the fact that MES involvement in these projects is not compulsory. And I'd like to understand sort of what percentage of state and local projects do you manage? What sort of factors influence the decision of whether they involve you or they don't involve you? Can they just circumvent the whole system? I'm assuming they can from what you've said. And then question number 2 really is, are there any statutory oversight or compliance responsibilities for your department?
So
That's a lot.
second question is easy. We have we have statute and we have regulatory development, but it's only for over our own actions. We comply with permits that are managed by the Maryland Department of Environment. So all of any facility that's in the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES permit system, has to comply with federal and state law for permits, but we don't create them. So as an entity, we're not a policy-making organization, or we are regulated, as Mr. Tosi's. And then, but the first part, no interaction with MES is compulsory. So we don't respond to RFPs or invitations for bid or anything else that's put out publicly. So we cannot in statute. We are forbidden from responding to, but if a county or if any entity asks us and they write a scope, they say what they want, we are also forbidden not to respond to a government entity. So a county government, municipality, or state agency in the environmental purview with an environmental mission, if they ask us to do something in our mission, we are. Okay, you gotta wait.
I have to let the chairman let me in here, but yeah, I mean that was put into place so that MES essentially wouldn't be directly competing with the private sector. Is I think the reason for that system and that setup. That's it. That's all. Yeah. And the only exception, the only exception to the non-compulsory comment would be if MDE orders MES like they did with Back River. That would be the only manner in which we are compelled to operate a facility or go in and perform some kind of function. And that's in statute. So when something is not meeting its permit requirements, MDE has the option to order MES to go in and operate the facility. But aside from that, we have to have a willing partner is what we like to say.
Okay, I was just going to follow up on that. I appreciate it. As far as how often are you involved in these projects? I noticed that you have 1,000+ projects in the state right now. Is that, I don't know how many projects there are because I'm new to this committee. Is that most of them, or if not, why are some of those projects not utilizing your services?
So county governments over time develop departments of environment or departments of public works that have varying scales of capability and desire to manage certain aspects of their environmental purview. So some have a department of environment that is 100 people and does work all over that county and is involved in every aspect and is involved with policy, and some have very small departments where I engage in. Director Tosi and I engage in county governments from really talking to talking to county commissioners and the county administrator, to talking to the Department of Environment director or the deputy directors. based on the difference in the size and scale of the counties and their operations. So that's why there's a difference. And I have no idea how many environmental projects there are in the state of Maryland. There's probably tens of thousands.
We probably couldn't handle every single environmental project within the state.
Just quickly before I go to the next delegate, what is the size of your agency? How many people do you have?
750 right now.
Okay. Next question goes to Delegate Foley.
I won't. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't touch the button. My question has to do with your Environmental Services Department. And I'm just wondering if you know of any plans, or if you know of any facilities, or you're involved in any processes to recycle and dispose of batteries, long-term storage batteries. I mean, we're moving much more in the state to electric vehicles and electric fleets, and this presents a problem with, the disposal of the batteries. And I just wondered if you had any plans, or you know of anything that's going on in the state to take care of the disposal problem of long-term storage batteries and lithium batteries.
No, we haven't. We support MEA and we support moving in that direction, but we've not been engaged with anyone right now on other than normal nickel cadmium batteries,
Right.
but not the lithium ion batteries
Thank
yet.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know you mentioned that you're involved in stormwater management, but did you say you're also involved in stream restoration?
We don't really have any stream restoration projects to my knowledge right now. I can check if there are some further down the org chart that I just don't know about. But we support the Clean Water Partnership in Prince George's County that's helped with their TMDL. We support MDOT and MDOT SHA in meeting their permit. And we were, so the Smart Pond project, which I worked on at MDOT, was actually managed by MES along with the Nature Conservancy and a small company called Opti that did the technology of the Smart Ponds. So that group, and we also support many of the universities in their stormwater management. So that group, Technical Environmental Services, has a lot of smaller projects in the scale of 10 to 25,000 that are part of supporting the assessment. So in Prince George's County with the Clean Water Partnership, we serve as third-party certification, but we're not doing the actual construction of all of those stormwater devices. But we help speed things along, and we're in permit review. And sometimes we're in permit review in DNR or MDE, and we are precluded because we're working on supporting them in their regulatory function from participating on the same projects. So, but they're different groups of people inside MES.
Okay.
Shoreline.
Oh, and we do a lot of shoreline restoration for the Port of Baltimore and MPA, and for special projects here or there too.
Okay,
And-
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It was very enlightening. So I have two quick, I hope, Mr. Chairman, organizational questions about MES and one policy question. The organizational questions are, so you were established in 1970, and you talked about how either all or most of the work you do is environmentally related. I was curious when permitting and procurement was added, if that was from the very beginning. And are those two functions, do those also have to be tied to environmental projects, or are they across the board, other non-environmental projects?
So can you repeat the first question?
So you talked about your origins in 1970 and doing primarily, if not all, environmentally related work, but then I was wondering if permitting and procurement were added later.
Okay.
And as of right now, are those two functions also only applied to environmental projects, or is that much broader?
Okay. So started only in water and wastewater with 22 people. And the way I've learned the story went was another part of the state government or county government would ask, well, you're doing water, wastewater, can you help us with our stormwater at the airport? And so they go, and generally it was because, and this is 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the airport had stormwater violations where they were letting de-icing fluid go into Anne Arundel County's, Howard? Anne Arundel County's water, and was damaging streams. So MES came in, did a little bit of work, and then the work expanded with that particular client partner. We don't do any work, and we are evaluated. There has to be an environmental connection. Now, that could be subjective in some instances, but for the most part, our board counsel, who is both the AG for the agency and board counsel, reviews our proposals, reviews any interaction in the contracts, and checks for our environmental mission along the way. So there has to be a language in the agreement that has something to do with the environment.
Okay.
And it can be, and we do air, water. In statute is air, water, land, and dredging was added.
So we have a statutory mission that is environmental. So we have to work within that space. And just to kind of put a fine point on the first question, we started out as a division within the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And at some point in
1993,
we were separated from planning. So originally, their procurement folks would have handled anything that we do. When we became a separate entity and in the structure that we have today, obviously we need to have our own procurement processes. So that's why, that's how the separation happened.
Right, okay. Thank you for that. And then the other organizational question is, you said you have 750 employees. Do you know how that compares to MDE and DNR? Are you bigger, smaller? Same?
Well, I worked at DNR. DNR had 1,400 pens. I don't know what their size is today. That was 2.5 years ago. But you can think of it as we're a mid-size state agency. We're not like the huge ones, but there are some smaller, tiny agencies with 40 people, 50 people, 20 people.
I think MDE is somewhere in the 600 person range.
So you're
I
bigger than
believe.
MDE?
Yes, we're operational.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the main reason for that is that we operate facilities. We need to be, always try to think of us as separate from MDE. MDE is going to be regulatory and enforcement.
Right.
MES is going to be operational.
But MDE, it's understaffed. I think that's not a disagreement, but, okay.
We might have passed a bill about that last year.
Well, yeah, okay, we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully things get better. But my policy question is, and I know this is a big, broad question, but it's concerning to me. How do you balance your goals of streamlining and shortening the permitting process with the importance of upholding our environmental protection laws? And I'm thinking specifically of water quality issues, point source and non-point source pollution. I know I just saw a grade of like a D+ for the Patuxent River, which runs through my district. That's concerning. How do you balance, those goals in a real way, not just philosophically?
So I don't know if I misspoke, but we are not, we are embedded in other state agencies supporting the processing of permits.
Right.
But the slide and the streamlining procurement was separate and distinct. Streamlining procurement is that when I was at MDOT, it took 18 months to 24 months for a capital project. They are much larger than my capital projects. I mean, there's a different 2 or 3 different orders of magnitude, but we can execute a capital project, especially in an environmental emergency. That's where we're given that power to move quickly for an environmental emergency. There was one time when the city of Frederick was running out of drinking water, and MES procured and added 1 million gallons of drinking water in 1 month in the 80s. It's one of my deputy director's best projects of her career. That was for a specific emergency, not every day of the week we're just rolling out contracts and throwing them out. That's not what's happening. So we have a normal process. Our capital projects that are managed by the state go through the Board of Public Works. And so the normal queue of how we prepare it and then how it's presented and when it gets on the docket and then approved. And my board has to approve anything over 200,000, and those are monthly meetings, so that slows the process. They review all contracts over 200,000. They see every agreement over 25,000 between that, but they see that in a list. And for new members, MES was subject to the MES Reform Act of 2021. So there were a lot of changes to our structure, our governmental structure, and recertification of our processes at that time, and as far as the principal authors of the bill.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because I just worry when I see streamlining or, efficiency, it could mean cutting corners, and we certainly don't want to see that.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yep, well said. Okay, anyone else have any questions for these two fine people? It appears not. I'm very interested in taking a look at that report. I should have asked for it earlier. So just email it to us because I'd like to do an assessment of that. So, okay, if that's all, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks for your presentation. Look forward to working with you and hearing from you in the future. Let me now call up MACO and MML. I'll just, Dominic Butchko, who's with MACO is here. Teresa Coons, who's the CEO of MML, and Angelica Bailey Tupari, who is the lobbyist who you typically see in this committee for MML. So you're the next contestants.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Still morning, right?
Fairly.
Barely. 9 minutes.
Who'd like to go first?
Ladies first?
Yep.
All right, cool. If I see a lady, I'll let you know. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Angelica Bailey Thupari. I'm the Legislative Director for the Maryland Municipal League. And it is my very great pleasure to introduce our new CEO, Teresa Coons. She just came on board at the end of October. Morning. Afternoon, whatever. Happy Tuesday. Happy 6th day, really. So Teresa's hit the ground running. We're very, very excited to have her. MML is re-energized. We're looking to the future. Many of you know us already, but for those who don't or want a refresher, we are the Maryland Municipal League. We represent 157 towns and cities across the state of Maryland, which is all of them, as well as 2 special taxing districts. We have several chapters. We host conferences and events throughout the year. We work closely with our association friends at MACO on probably 85 to 95% of the issues. So we're very happy to be at the table with them as well. We have a small team internally, and the residents of Maryland that live in municipalities are between 1.5 and 2 million after the last census. So we represent quite a few Marylanders.
And for those of you who may recognize me, I was with the Realtors for last several sessions. So I was doing climate change in this committee last session, and here I am now, and I appreciate you having us today. I want to thank especially Delegate Davis and Delegate Morgan. They dealt with me at the county level for several years. They came here to escape, and I'm still here, and I apologize. But I am here in a new role, so anything we can do to help for those who have municipalities, if you don't, we're still here, willing to work with everyone, and we look forward to working together.
And good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Excuse me, my name is Kevin Canali. I'm the Legislative Director, excuse me, at the Maryland Association of Counties. I'm joined by my colleague, Dominic Butchko, and many of you know MACO as well, but MACO is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization representing 23 counties in Baltimore City here in Annapolis. We are a member-driven organization, so you'll often see, most likely Dom will be in this committee more than I will. Our advocacy at the table, all of that is driven by our members. So every week during session, we bring in our legislative committee. It's made up of local elected officials from every single county in Baltimore City, and they're the ones who take positions on bills and instruct us how to go and advocate. We also do host a number of events for our members, and we really view ourselves as intergovernmental partners. MACO has a lot of research, a lot of information pertaining to counties and local government structure, and we hope that you'll call on us for that information. We really appreciate that part of this role, and we enjoy working with all of you. I know we were asked to briefly talk about our 4 legislative initiatives. I know we're running short on time, so I'll go through them briefly. These initiatives, again, are member-driven. We solicit potential initiatives from all of our members in county government land, and by our bylaws, we can have up to 4 each session. This session, we do have 4. The first one has to deal with body cameras. Counties are excited about body cameras. Nearly every county, I think, has implemented a body camera program or is in the process. We would like to see some more state centralized resources, not just for the capital cost of the cameras, but it's very expensive to store all of this footage, and then the redaction is expensive as well. So we want to avoid duplication of effort where we can, and we think some centralized resources just make sense. The other piece of this is protecting victims, families, and witnesses from this footage getting out onto the internet or onto social media. So we really want to tighten the laws there and make sure that our custodians are not releasing anything that could be used to harm an individual, whether or not that's through threats, intimidation, or just harassment on social media. Important to note, we're not talking about any interaction with a police officer. Anytime there's a complaint filed, all of that is and should be in the public domain and available. But we're essentially talking about things where nothing happened, and there's potentially a child or other sensitive information that people will try and get and put online. So we really like to shore up the language there. The second initiative for us is dealing with cannabis. All of you know it's going to be a huge issue this session. MACO is really looking for two things here. We're not taking a position on cannabis generally, but we would like to see a local component when it comes to taxation. We know that counties are going to be on the front lines for a lot of the issues that will happen on the ground in terms of zoning and nuisances and public safety. So we feel like that's certainly appropriate, and in nearly every state that has legalized adult use cannabis, that has been a component of the law. The second piece would be a local opt-out. Again, nearly every state that has legalized adult use cannabis has a local opt-out provision, and that would be a local government would have to either pass a local resolution, or it would be up to the voters within that jurisdiction to decide whether or not they'd like to opt in. Quickly onto our third initiative, transparency in education spending. I know that sounds like it's going to be a big fight. I assure you it will not be. We think that the blueprint presents an opportunity for counties and local boards to work closer together. This is all public money, and for counties, it's often more than 50% of our entire budget goes to local school systems. So we'd like to work more closely. With the influx of federal dollars during the pandemic, there were a lot of questions about which money was being spent first, right? So this pot of money federally, let's spend that before we come back and ask for more from the county. So we feel like, and we've worked closely with the school boards and other partners, and I think we're going to have a good path forward here and a smooth path. I'll let Dom talk about the last initiative and close us out.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, first, it is good to be back and good to be back in person. So first, our final major initiative, and this is really big, it impacts all jurisdictions, both rural, suburban, and urban. It has to do with firefighter recruitment and retention. This started first at MACO in the volunteer sphere, where we saw that on the Eastern Shore in particular, we have situations where 60-year-old and 70-year-olds are actually being asked to respond to firefighter calls. And everyone knows when you call 911, you have a certain expectation that you're going to get a certain service and people are going to respond. What we later learned is that this is actually a problem for our career firefighters as well, and is just as big as Prince George's as it is as Kent County, as it is in Washington County. And so we're pushing a recruitment and retention study bill. We have all major stakeholders, from the volunteers, from the careers, from the unions, from the people who do the training, from the people who hire at the county level. Everyone is together in a coalition to do a study bill to look at how do we solve this recruitment and retention crisis. The second thing I want to talk to you guys about really quick is infrastructure. And infrastructure is really big. We talked about, there's a surplus everyone's speaking about in Annapolis right now, and it's short term. Infrastructure is huge, and it's huge for two reasons. The first one is the majority of roads and transit systems are operated by counties in Maryland. Also, when MES was here, there was a lot of talk about sanitation infrastructure, water, et cetera. Most of that is developed and implemented and operated at the local level. And so just the basic quality of life and the environmental health that we have, that is implemented at our level, and infrastructure is massive. Counties put out a letter asking the incoming governor for more infrastructure funds, just because we have aging systems, we have systems we have to expand, and that touches on one third thing I want to hit on, which is housing. Housing is probably going to be the key issue that we see during this legislative session. MACO is at the forefront of this issue, and one of the biggest things that we're seeing that is impacting affordable housing, and the big thing why we can't roll out more affordable housing, is that we simply don't have the infrastructure. Director. Queen Anne's County is a perfect example. When it comes to their water sanitation, they are at their max from MDE. They cannot build any more housing because their facilities cannot clean any more water. They are at their effluent discharge limits. But this also impacts transit. This also impacts schools and the number of students we have. So counties are at the forefront at this. I know Delegate Stewart, you have a few bills you introduced, and we want to be a partner on these issues. And so I look forward over the next 3 months working with you guys.
Delegate Stewart has a few bills? That seems uncharacteristic. We have a number of questions. So first goes to Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank you all for being here today and, giving us some information about how you work. And so my question is, I guess, more for Mako, Kevin, and Dominic. So you have 24 counties, jurisdictions you represent. Can you give us a little information about how decision-making is made in terms of whether you support or oppose bills? Is it a vote? Is it a majority vote of the counties? Is there any weighting by population, or how are those decisions made?
So it's one county, one vote, and in counties where you have a council and an executive, it's half vote each. So the Mako staff presents the bills, like I said, every Wednesday, and each county has a vote. So I would say 98% of the time it's unanimous. There are times where a majority vote will have to rule the day, but it is 100% up to, again, those local elected officials who sit on the Mako Legislative Committee to determine our positions on bills.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can add, similarly, we also have a legislative committee that meets every week, and it's similar in terms of voting.
Thank you.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. It's great to see you here and everybody working together well. That doesn't 100% happen sometimes, but I wanted to ask about, even though this committee doesn't deal with cannabis, the issue of having local opt-out for counties. Would you in Mako also support having local opt-out for the municipalities within your counties?
So
Or
I think,
opt-in if there's a difference, if they choose to not follow what the county's doing and prefer what the state is doing?
Sure. At MML, we also have a similar position where we'd like to see some of the tax revenue from the cannabis.
Yeah, I'm not asking about the tax issue.
We'd like to also support an opt-out for our municipalities within those geographic regions for growing and/or dispensaries. We understand the opt-out is going to be a difficult, I think, hiccup for everyone to come to, but some of those towns don't feel they can support, and that's where we want to be able to give them the opt-out options.
Or, well, what
Well,
about?
let's let Mako
Yeah,
respond.
I just wanted to be clear about my question, because my question is about if there's a conflict between what a municipality wants and what the county wants, that municipality is located. So either way, if the county wants opt-in and the municipality wants to opt-out, or vice versa, do you have a position, or have you talked about that possibility?
it's a great question. I know that our legislative committee has not talked about that issue. We work very closely with MML, so I think we should discuss with them a potential framework here, but I think as local governments, we support local opt-out. So we feel like these decisions are best made on the ground, and I'm sure we could come to a resolution if we get to that point in terms of, who opts out and when and how that whole process works. But it is a very good question and one that we certainly will discuss.
Okay, thank you.
Before I recognize Delegate Terrazzo, let me just be clear. The position of Mako here with respect to cannabis is that a particular county should be able to opt out of what?
So any retail, cultivation, I think they're not going to be able to opt out for people, of course, possessing cannabis legally or transporting cannabis through the jurisdiction. But when it comes to the retail and cultivation, we feel like there should be a local opt-out on the table.
Okay.
I almost touched the button. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for MML. I think you said you represent 157 towns and cities, which is all of them, and then 2 special taxing districts. Which are those?
I believe they are both in Montgomery County. One is Friendship Heights, and the other is Colmar Manor, possibly? Yeah, they're quite small.
What is the second one?
I think it's Colmar Manor, but we can get back to you. Oh, that's right. Special taxing districts are treated quite differently than municipalities.
Okay.
So it often doesn't, they're often not impacted in the same way as the legislation that MML deals with.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised to hear. Is that new to add?
No.
But you've always had those special tax.
Yeah, we haven't annexed anything recently.
Thank you.
No comment, yeah.
Well played.
Any other questions for our friends from, yes?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yeah, go ahead.
We didn't have an opportunity to discuss a couple of our legislative priorities. So
Go
I just
for
want
it.
to quickly touch on police accountability boards, which I know many of you have already heard our presentation on this. The suite of police reform legislation that passed in 2021, I believe that was House Bill 670 or 671, included a new disciplinary framework for police accountability boards, administrative charging committees, only on the county level. So municipalities that have their own police departments, of which there are 88 in the state, do not have access to that vehicle of disciplinary procedure. So we are looking for enabling legislation so that municipalities that have the resources, the emotional energy, frankly, to go ahead and implement these are permitted to do so, and we've spoken with quite frequently on this issue, and they have no objection.
I presume you're talking about basically the larger municipalities like Gaithersburg, Frederick, people like that. I'm not saying them specifically, but people like them.
Mostly yes, but you'd be surprised. One of the things that this committee will hear from MML is that a one-size-fits-all approach very much does not work for our members. We love enabling, we don't love mandates. Our members are so incredibly diverse, and not necessarily in the ways that you would expect. Some of our smaller municipalities might have the resources and the desire to go ahead and implement these boards themselves. Some of the larger municipalities may decide not to. Either they feel that they're covered by their counties, they have a great working relationship, what have you. So it's not as cut and dry as you might think, depending on population.
And Mr. Chair, if I can add, some of our smaller municipalities actually have more law enforcement on their small towns than the entire county combined. And that is remarkable, and they have no seats on these boards right now.
Got it, understood. Any questions for any of these individuals? Wow, I think we might be done for the day.
Thank you
you
all.
so
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much
invitation.
for the chance.
Thank you so much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to adjourn shortly. Just wanted to continue my little nag about the slush fund donation of $50 per delegate, $50 per delegate, correct? Yeah. And so go ahead and feel free to grab a bag of potato chips, because it's very important for you to eat badly during session. It's a Maryland tradition. So, okay, I would ask our vice chair if he had anything to say, but he's at home with COVID, and I've tested twice, I'm negative, and I also don't have COVID. And okay, and Delegate Lehman, yeah.
Subcommittee assignments, how far off?
Oh, well, I'm going to do that tomorrow and the day after. I haven't gotten around to that yet because of the volume of work at the dreaded day job. So, okay. Unless there are any other thoughts, meeting adjourned.